Hi, today is March 15th, 2023, and here are my poems for the day. The first one is poem number 439 for the year, A Start. There was a pessimistic feeling yesterday that there weren't going to be any ideas worth pursuing today. In the past, that feeling has usually turned out to be wrong, but so far today it hasn't been. A poem about guilt and remorse didn't make it past the word stupid. Then maybe 20 minutes were spent on an idea that felt like pandering, or maybe like it was making the author seem more noble than the author probably is. That poem has been abandoned. Perhaps I will tell you about it someday. I don't know if I like the idea of this poem either, but not liking this idea gives me an idea, so that's a start, at least. Poem number 440, The Idea. They didn't like the idea about not liking the idea. Objectively, they knew that there was nothing wrong with the idea of not liking the idea in theory, but in practice, their subjective mind rejected the idea of rejecting the idea outright. They found the idea of deeming the idea untenable or unacceptable both unacceptable and untenable. And so they accepted the idea of discarding the idea. And then they discarded the idea and moved on. Poem number 441, Nothing. Nothing will come of nothing, said King Lear in line 99 of the first scene of Act 1, and that turned out to be true. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing, said Billy Preston in Nothing from Nothing, and that's just basic arithmetic. But when Jerry and Larry set out to create a show about nothing, they really came up with something. It feels as if these three examples ought to point to some conclusion. It feels like they ought to add up to something. But I got nothing. Poem number 442, Sight. Well, I wanted to shave anyway, and when I shave, I like to prop the phone up so that I can read an article. And this morning, I started an article in the New York Review of Books. Now, if I had seen the article called Trees in Themselves by Verlin Klinkenborg, I definitely would have gone for that. And as I look some more, I see several others that would have superseded what I landed on. But what I landed on was Michalina's Boys by Sam Needleman. And what grabbed me was the subheading. In the Five Senses, the long-forgotten Flemish painting Michalina Wotier shows her vision of visions. And I like that phrase, vision of vision. So I went for it. The Five Senses are 5 paintings of boys. Each painting illustrates a different sense, and they are now part of an ongoing exhibit at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. I would have read more of this article if I had had more of a mustache or a beard, or if I had decided to shave my head. Instead, I only got as far as the introduction to the painting that Needleman says is Wotier's arrival at the supreme sense. And then I looked at the painting to which he was referring, and I was blown away. I took a screenshot and told myself I must learn more, and later I will finish the article and read Michalina Wotier's Wikipedia page, and I will look more closely at this painting called Sight, and I will see what I can see. Poem number 443, First. I saw Jonathan Richman sing the song Girlfriend at a club called the 80s, somewhere in the East 80s, in the early 1980s. Alex Garvin and I saw him in the bathroom before the show, and Alex bravely told him that we had been enjoying the shows he had been doing in the New York area that time around, and we liked that he played Pablo Picasso at Irving Plaza and some other song from the first Modern Lovers album at Maxwell's. But Alex told Jonathan there was one song from the first album that we really wanted to hear that we hadn't ever heard him play. Jonathan asked what song it was, and Alex and I both said at the same time, Girlfriend. And Jonathan said, well, we'll rectify that situation, gentlemen. And he did. I'm thinking of that moment now because when he sang Girlfriend at the 80s, in the 80s, he explained the first verse. If I were to walk to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, first I'd go to the room where they keep the Cézanne. But if I had by my side a girlfriend, I could look through the paintings. I could look right through them. Jonathan interrupted the song to explain that he would go to that room because that's where all the pretty art students were. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. I bring this up because the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston is where the Five Senses by Michalina Wotier are. And if I were to walk to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, that would be a very long walk. It would take 3 days. But if I were to walk there, first I would go to the room where they keep the Five Senses. Then maybe I'd check out the Cézannes. You know, I always thought Jonathan said Cézanne's, but I think he says Cézanne because maybe there was only one Cézanne there at the time. Now there are two. So I'd definitely go and look at them. But first I'd go to the room where they keep the Michelena Wotiers, and depending on the circumstances, possibly I could look through the paintings. I could look right through them. Poem number 444, Last. At first, she couldn't wait for it to end. But by the middle, she was in the middle of it, and she was into it. And by the end, at last, she wanted it to last and last and last. And the last little poem of the day is poem number 445, An Ending. All of this just goes to show that you can have a start that's very pessimistic and still have an end that's somewhat optimistic. That's good to know, but I think I knew that already. All right, that's it for today. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.